from the settings here, because the audience is all governed from the workflow itself. So you might have it through from like a form fill or something. There's no way you can attach that group to this campaign, or this campaign might be based on interaction from a previous campaign. So we don't want you having to work out the group logic. Communicator will do all of that for you. You then build your campaign in a normal sense. So you would add in your sender alias, your reply to, and everything on those lines. And then if we then jump to the email tab, again, you would attach an email to it. So what I'm going to have to do today, so I can show you the whole principle of it, is I just have to initiate this campaign so I can take you through the whole thing. But none of this will be being sent to a live audience at all, so you're not going to use A, any of your email volume, and B, it's, you know, it's going to die after essentially the session. So does anybody have any questions regarding the details tab and how you set up that to be compatible with the workflow tool? So the only two things are setting a close date and time in the future, and the type to follow-up/workflow campaign.
Yeah, that looks pretty straightforward.
Exactly. Yeah. So you would then go through the normal process, which is a save and initiate, and make sure that everything's all right. But you'll notice there's no audience option here because there's no audience attached to this campaign. I'll then hit yes, please initiate my campaign, initiate, goes through and does the normal checks, but again removes the audience because there's no audience figure to give you. I'll just click on initiate. What that's essentially doing is that's now going to be sitting in the background just waiting for dates to be applied to it. So you would need to initiate, you would still need to create all the campaigns and all the emails inside of Gator Mail, and then you then set them as that type to make them appear in the workflow application itself. So if we go to the workflow, what we'll be presented with is the Get Started Now section. And what this is your dashboard, and it shows you how many live workflows you've got, how many tests, how many are in design, how many have finished, and how many in the queue to be sent out. If you guys are super organized, what you can do is you can click on the root folder, and as you can see, you've got the plus button to create new folders, and you can store the workflows themselves in those folders, so it's nice and organized. But to create a workflow, you can either click on create a workflow, or you can click on the drop down where you can copy an existing workflow that exists in your system already, because maybe you want to just do the same thing completely but maybe change a couple of the conditions or the wait periods, or you can use create a workflow from one of our templates. So if you were to select create a workflow from a template, you've got the template and you've got a drop down. Within that drop down, you can select from one of these templates which we've kind of created for you. And all you would do is essentially, so if we clicked on anniversary workflow, we'll click on the next button, and then you'll be asked to enter in the name and all that information there. On the last tab, on the next tab, you'll then be asked to enter your entry point and so on and so forth. So all it is taking you step by step as opposed to actually getting involved with the workflow itself.
So sorry, just on that, just take a step back. So let's, for example, the anniversary one.
Yeah.
Because you're saying we just, by name, you mean name of that, to give that a name.
Yeah, absolutely. So I could call it birthday.
So if I could say, yeah, birthday, and so then where would it pull that data from if we're not pulling it from an audience?
So you would still import your data into Communicator, and let's just go through this. If I go and select, if I just because I have to add in a test email address, so I add in mine.
Right.
On the next button here, I'm then being asked to select the Gator group.
Okay.
So let's say it's the Denmark CV. Like I said, we won't make anything live.
But okay, but in there, would it have date of birth then? Effectively, you're saying in that
exactly.
group.
So what you're now doing is you're now clicking on the next button, selecting the attribute, which will be birthday, which let's say is address free. If I click on the next, I can then select the date and time that must be matched. So it must be an international Hawaii, Alaska, or GMT, whatever it might well be. And then on the next button, I then select the campaign that I want to send them. So let's say it's workflow 1, which says happy birthday, here's whatever it is. You're looking for a new job on your birthday or something along those lines.
Right.
And then when you click on create a workflow, that will then build all of this for you. So you haven't got to go through and change it because you've gone through it programmatically.
Okay.
Yeah. To be honest with you, not a lot of people do use the templates just because you normally want to do additional things to it, if that makes any sense. So you normally want to say, right, on the birthday email, if they interact with it, then send them another campaign. If not, then exit them or something like that.
Yeah.
What essentially this anniversary one does is it's got a go to stage, which means it will then wait until that date and time that you've, their birthday in this case, has been reached, and then send them back to the top, and they go through the loop exactly the same the next year.
Right.
So you don't need to kind of update on a year-to-year basis. Once it's there for good.
Okay.
But you need to ensure that you got that data in your database in the first place in order for it to kind of work successfully. And I suppose it's different for you guys, but with us, how we consider using this is to let people know when their contract expires, like a month before, and you would go through exactly the same routine as this is I'm going through now.
Yeah, I mean, that would be useful for us, yeah, to send out to contractors, and equally we could send out to the permanent people after they've been there 3 months. That would be a good one to kind of try and set up now, is from placement date, which we could put into the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And then do a follow-up email after 3 months just saying, you know, you've been in your job now for 3 months, hope everything's going all right. Please let us know how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you would apply the exact same matrix to this, but the only thing that you would do is where you've got this go to stage, you would have to delete this component because you don't want them to go around again.
No, it would just be once. Yeah. So it'd just be a one point. Okay.
Exactly. So all I would do is delete that stage. In fact, I'll create this for you so you can then go away and use it. If that makes sense. Obviously, you need to change the fields, but it's really easy to do. So if I then go to decisions, I add something called an exit, and every possible exit point of the workflow, it must contain an exit, so the workflow knows not to look or do anything else with it. So if I drag the exit over to my canvas here, they're asking me to enter in a value. I don't need to insert a value. The value is there if you wanted, off the back of this, it's to join and start another workflow. But in this case, we don't want anything to happen after this, so we can click on OK. And that's that set up. So all you would essentially need to do now is where you've got store value from address 3 is change that to the field that you would have created.
Okay, yeah, okay, fine, I'll get that. So the placement start date basically, rather than the anniversary.
Absolutely, and then you just say wait until, so wait for the anniversary field member, which is linked to that field, and then you can say match the day and month. Yeah, so when that day and month is reached, you can match it. So what you guys might do is say when that day and time has been reached, instead of wait till 9:30, wait 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's then going to be in there and say, look, 3 months later, we're now going to receive that. So let's change that. So roughly 3 months.
Could you do it every 3 months for a year, or is there any way of doing it for every 3 months and for a year?
Absolutely, absolutely. What we would do if that was the situation, let's just get out of this because this card changes. So all you would do here is where it says, wait, let's think about this. Let's think about this before we go to wait using the store data. It's the current date of March. Store without contact value, store address 3, wait until 9:30. Okay. So what you would essentially, in fact, it'll be even easier than that. You don't even need to worry about even doing anything too complicated. All you would do is after the send email workflow 1, you can then change the wait period to be 3 months. So let's pretend that 3 months on average is around 90 days. You can say wait 90 days and then send email 2. So if I go to mail on the drop down here, I can then say send email campaign. Yeah. So what that's now doing is that's now saying, right, we're going to wait the 90 days and then send them workflow 1 again, or you might select a different campaign, but unfortunately for all my examples today, it's always going to be using workflow 1.
Okay, so my workflow 1 email would be, congratulations, you've been in your job for 3 months, hope everything's going okay. My workflow 2, if that was the next email, which is workflow 1, but it could be workflow 2, would say, congratulations, you've been in your job for 6 months. Hope everything's going okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then you'd put the next 90 days in, and you'd go, congratulations, you've been in your job for 90 days.
Yeah.
And then how would you, at a year, so you'd say happy birthday, you'd have a workflow 4 saying happy birthday, happy anniversary, first year in your job. If you wanted to exit at that point, you just have an exit, which after a year of sending it, it wouldn't do it anymore.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So
okay.
After that year, you can then have that exit, which will then again make them leave.
Okay.
So that is one of the more complicated workflows, believe it or not, that goes on, just because you've got to be very careful when you import the data and to make sure the date and time is absolutely correct and the process is working. So what you would then do is you would test the workflow yourself, but you would advance yourself on, because you don't want to be waiting a whole year before the workflow goes live in testing, because that would just be ludicrous. I mean, you'd get no work done if that was the case. So you can then advance yourself on to the next stage. So instead of waiting for those 90 days, you can say, "Oh, send me the next email," just to make sure that that flow is working.
Okay.
One thing that I'll do is let me change that. What do you want to call the workflow?
Let's say work anniversary.
Oh, you're testing me now. I'm testing my bad spelling. There we go. So to change the name of it, because I did that really quickly. If you ever want to change the name of it, you've just got the edit this workflow details button here.
Okay.
Where you can then enter in the name, and you can also add in more test email addresses. So you might want to obviously replace that with your own email address. And you've then got the start date and time and the end date and time. You want to make sure that end date and time is kind of pretty much forever, because I imagine you'll want that process to run forever, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So the start date would be today, and the end date would be
at 20, 50
whatever.
or whatever it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But that is really important to change that end date more than anything, because the amount of times I've seen somebody send out a workflow and it's finished before everybody's gone through the whole process of it, and it's quite upsetting that you then have to tell them that we now need to do data manipulation to figure out what stage they were in to exclude them, and so on and so forth. So, you always want to be very careful at end date, because if you don't put it, it is an absolute nightmare for you guys.
Okay.
And then to save it, you've got the Save the Workflow button there.
Okay.
So that's obviously the work anniversary. I'll just drag the exit onto there, and then we'll go over creating one from kind of scratch, so I can go over more of the different components with you guys. So under the Workflows tab, the first thing that you guys are going to want to do is you're going to want to click on your name at the top here, and only one person needs to do this. So you obviously decide internally on who does it, but you need to go to the Instance Settings tab. On the Instance Settings tab, you then need to enter in your GatorLeads username, your GatorLeads password, and your GatorLeads client ID, and it shows you how to find the client ID inside of GatorLeads itself. So you would go into GatorLeads, go to Admin, Embed Tracking, and then you've got your ID number in there. Without that in there, that means that you can't use GatorLeads to kind of push the data into the workflow.
Right. Okay. And is that every time?
Not every time. It's just a one-off. So you just need to get one person to go in and do it. Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's for everyone.
And that's under GatorLeads, is it?
No. So to find the information, it's under GatorLeads, but to get to this tab, it's under the workflow, and you click on your name at the top here. Go to Instance Settings, and then you've then got that file path of how you can find it within GatorLeads itself.
Okay.
Right, so creating a very simple creating a workflow from scratch, if you click on Create a Workflow, it will take you into the Workflow tab itself. The first thing that I tell you guys to do is to save it. So if you click on Edit the Details, Edit this Workflow Details, you can add in your name of what you want to call it, and any notes, and again you can add in the test email addresses. You probably don't know when you want it to go live when you're starting the creation, so you can go in and change that at a later date, but you might want to change the end date because it's one less thing to remember at that later date. Clicking the OK button will then save that, and as we can see where it said untitled, it's now saying training because that's what we've called it. What I've now got is I've now got 3 options to say how do I get my data into this workflow. So is it from GatorLeads tracking? So if I drag GatorLeads tracking on here, I can add a description to say somebody that hits one of our I don't know, I'm going to go upload CV button. And then where I've got rules, I'll then click on the plus button for the add rule, and I would then enter in the end part of the URL, so the extension of the URL. So let me show you an example of this. So let's say you want to take anybody that hits, goes onto the aerospace tab. If I copy, what I don't want to do is I don't want to copy the whole URL. I just want to copy the last bit of it. So up to that /. So inside of the URL, it will just look like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you click on the OK button, that will then add that in. You might want to have multiple pages in there because the chances of them hitting one of the pages might be quite high. So if you, or might be quite low, sorry. So if you
so for example, if anyone hits any of our, just go back into our website again, just as an exercise. So if anyone hits our, if we go to scroll down, actually, so we went submit your vacancies page, or about us, I suppose submit your vacancies page. You click on that.
Yep.
And then if you go down, scroll down again. So then all of these related pages here, which are all related to client pages, so we could put all of the end of the URLs in there because we'd actually understand that they'd be client pages, yeah?
Absolutely, so that's what you would do. And what that would say, and this is very important, so you can see at the top here you've got a drop down, it says any of the following rules. So that means any of those URLs being...
And is that just on a new line? Do you put it on as a new line, or do you have to click add each time?
You have to click on the add button each time,
right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
However, if, for example, you had that they must have hit all 3 of those pages, you can click on the drop down there and say all, which means they must hit of every web page that's in that rule itself. Yeah. But
okay, so you can get quite specific then. So if they hit an aerospace page with a supportability page, you could send them something that was about aerospace supportability, effectively.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can just continuously keep adding it by clicking on the add rule button, adding in the end of the URL there.
So for Adam, I'm just thinking, Adam, if they went on the commercial page and then clicked the business development link, you could get a business development thing to them. A commercial manager thing, you get a commercial manager thing to them. Okay, understood.
Perfect. Perfect. So that's one way of doing it. The second way is through a Gatormail group entry. I'm sure I won't need to explain this in too much detail, but what this is this clicking on the drop down and selecting the group that you've got inside the communicator. And so this is looking at all of your different groups.
So if we had, yeah, let's say for example in there then, so we had prospect clients, yeah?
Yeah.
How would you work a flow like that? So we said, right, I've given Will a list of 200 prospect clients that we've had some contact with, but we've not spoken to in 6 months. They're in an email, or they're in a list of emails. We upload that email list. Then we're at this point, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So you upload that email list in Gatormail the same way as you normally do, and all you're doing here is just selecting that group. So what you would then might want to consider doing is, let's pretend basic training is that prospect group.
Yeah.
We can then go to, right, let's send them an email campaign to see what the crack is, basically, to see if they buy it, anything. So it'd be very kind of, not too salesy, just more information.
Yeah, so, hi, how you doing? We used to work with you, haven't been in contact for a while, blah, blah, blah. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so you know we're still around, etc., etc. So what you've then got is you send them that email campaign there.
Yep.
We can then go to decisions and add something called a condition here.
Okay. Yep.
And what that condition would be is to say, right, there's 3 different links in there that are about 3 different job specs that we offer. Okay. So I can now go to the rules tab and click on the plus button and say, right, from that Gatormail campaign that I've had that's attached in the previous email, select that campaign, which is Workflow 1. Yeah. And say anybody that hit a web hit, so hit a web page, and I can click on the drop down and then select that web page that I want to send.
And that would be based on a link that you've included in the email, would it?
Correct. Correct.
So you put the web link in. So you say find about us, and if they click the about us page, we're saying if they hit the about us page, then they get this. Correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
They hit
right.
so they get added to that group. They get sent this campaign. If they hit the Twitter page, which can be the about us page, then they meet that rule criteria and be spat out down the positive channel, where you can then send them a bit more information about what you guys have to offer. Whilst if they don't, you might send them the same campaign again, just a week or so later.
Okay.
So I jumped the gun a bit there. So on the details tab, you would enter in your description, and I know this is really stupid, I feel embarrassed saying it, but when you add in your description, make it as descriptive as possible, because it will really help you, so you don't have to keep opening it up. So I could say clicked on about us, wait 2 days, so then we know how long they've got in there. So again, it's just saving you a bit of time. And below that, you can then say, right, so what do we want to happen with this? Do we want to execute the rules periodically until a wait period is reached? Probably, we probably do want to do that. So if we do...
So can you just explain what that means between those two rules, please?
I will do. It will make more sense when I go on to the wait period. So from selecting that option, it now gives me a wait period that people will wait in that condition for. Whilst previously, without any wait condition, it means that they'll be moved on to the negative channel more than likely, because they're not going to interact with the email within 10 minutes, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
So we're now saying wait in this condition for, let's say, a week. So I can just change that to 7 days.
Yeah.
And then that means that they're now sitting in that condition. They've got 7 days to interact with that campaign. If they interact with it before that, whenever they interact with it before those 7 days, they'll then be sent down the positive channel straight away. So instead of it waiting a day or 7 days in this scenario, it's then going to send them the next campaign straight away, if that's how you wanted it to work.
Okay.
So off the back of them doing something, they're getting an email straight away, which some people absolutely love. Some people think, well, maybe we could end up sending them 6 emails within 1 day, which might be a bit too much. So how people would go about that scenario is, if they didn't want them to wait the 7 days, and if they clicked on it, send them straight away through, then what you would do is you would still have the condition in there, but before the condition, you would have a wait period. So you would drag that wait period there, and then put a time of 7 days. So now what that's saying is wait in the wait period for 7 days, send them in the condition, and if in those 7 days when they've been in that wait period, they've interacted, so they've clicked on that About Us page, then send them down the positive channel, whilst if they haven't interacted with it, then send them down the negative channel. Does that make sense?
So what you're saying is, whenever they interact with that campaign, it will be 7 days until something happens on that campaign, correct? So if they interact day 1 on the campaign, they won't get anything again from us for 7 days.
Correct. Correct.
So if
you've got the wait period in there.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you didn't, then they did interact within 7 days, they'll get it pretty much instantly.
So, but then you could have that as 1 day, basically. So whenever they interact, a day later, they'll get an email from us.
Absolutely. You could absolutely have that as 1 day. But the problem is with making it kind of that short time period is you're only giving them a day to click on a link. If they were out of the office on that day, and obviously...
Oh, no, so I thought it was once they'd clicked on the link, that wait period for the next action to happen.
No. So what this wait is saying is wait 7 days before you go into the condition, and then if you have interacted with it in those 7 days, then send them to it straight away. Whilst if they haven't, then spit them out the negative way. But what you can do is, if you wanted it to work the other way around, so they sit in the condition for, let's say, 7 days, but then if they interact with that email, let's say within those 7 days, wait a day before they receive the next one, I'll just add the wait period to the right-hand side.
After, right.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I'd link the green to that wait period. So if I click on the little green icon there, a little bubble will appear at the top where I can link that, so it's now going to wait that 1 day.
Right. So wait it doesn't matter, it's the interaction, isn't it? So, okay, got you.
It's the condition that kind of spits them out straight away, but that wait will just hold them in there regardless of what they do.
Okay.
So again, like I said, if you wanted to send them the same email again, then you can there's a really quick way of doing this. You can just click on Control-C and Control-V on that campaign, and that's then copied that for me, so I can now just drag that, drag the negative point to the top of that campaign. So now they're going to be sent that campaign again.
Is there a reason you're doing it left and right? Is that what you tend to do? Or is that just the way that these models...
It's always going to end up left and right, if that makes sense, because the green's always going to appear on the right. But if you wanted to switch it, you can absolutely do it by just dragging it over there. So
but naturally positive actions will go to the right, correct?
Absolutely.
Right, fine.
James, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Do all of the emails need to be set up prior to creating these workflows?
Very good question. Very good question. I would create a good chunk of them, but you don't have to have finished them because you can change the workflow from live mode back into design mode, and then you can then lengthen the workflow if you wanted to. And when you went to change it back to live mode, it would remember exactly where they were and would continue as normal.
Right. Okay.
So in answer to that is no, but you want to get a couple. You want to get, if you were to do one a week and the condition was one a week, then that's absolutely fine. But if it was every 3 days, then people would start to exit out before you got around to building the other emails.
Okay. Cool.
So we've now obviously done that condition. Off the back of that, just so we don't confuse things, we'll probably send them, after that wait, we'll send them a different campaign relating to some particular topic. But just so I don't repeat the different emails and confuse people, I'm just going to show you other things that you might want to do. So if they come out through this condition positively, we might want to send somebody internally a notification to say, yo, these guys have come out, call them to see if they need any help. So if I drag the send notification over to the right hand side here, I can add in my description of it to say interacted with email 1, so we're all aware of what's going on. Enter in the email addresses of who this alert needs to be sent to. Add in your subject line for the notification. So in this case, maybe get back in touch. And I can say in that email, hi, James, please get in touch with... and then I would then insert the details below. So we can now start to make these details dynamic by copying this bottom section here. So you'll see in the blue bar you've got 2 brackets, and if I copy those brackets and paste it into this notification here, I just replace the attribute name with the attribute name of that field. So for example, first name, and that's now going to say please get in touch with James. Obviously James is no good, you want to continue with that, say last name, company name and email address, or maybe just a phone number, but that is how you would go about doing that. Does that make sense in regards to the setting up a notification?
So in the blue box at the moment, would that give you all of the options that you've got to add the merge field, or I'm getting confused about where you pull the merge values, or is it from the merge value that you believe you've got in your spreadsheet?
It's the merge value that you believe you got in the spreadsheet, but what you guys are going to want to do, and I am going to speak as an enhancement request for this because this came up the other day, is a very good point. At the moment, it has to be a direct match with your field. So what you would need to do is have Gator Mail open, essentially, go to Audience, Business Objects, and then you've then got the attribute name there. So if you wanted address 1, you would copy address 1 and then replace that with the attribute name, in this case, first name, for it to pull through the address.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so the attribute name there, so when you're copying that, so you keep the right code, you just always have to go and cross-reference Gator Mail with that field. So again, go into Gator Mail, go to Audience, Business Object, find that field and say it was confirmed opt-in. I can then copy that attribute name and paste it in there, and then at least I know that everything's correct.
Okay.
If you click on the OK button, that will then basically set that notification up. Sometimes, I must admit, the workflow likes to point it into the wrong direction, so what you'll have to do occasionally is click on the arrow to destroy that link between the two and then link it correctly. So click on the bottom wait period there and drag that to the top send notification.
Okay.
Another thing that people like to do is they also like them to go into a group inside a communicator because at a later date you might want to retarget them. So what you could do here is if this group was the people that who hadn't engaged in the last 3 months, on the negative channel here, you might have a wait period. So I drag a wait period there of again another 90 days. And off of the back of that 90 days, I might then add them to a group in Communicator. So if I click on Gator Mail, I can then select Add to Group. And I'll then click on the drop down and select the group that I want to move them into. So what that is essentially doing is that's basically saying, right, these guys haven't interacted with that campaign. So 90 days later, I'm going to do the same thing. And this is going to be the group entry point for the next 90 days to say, it's now been 6 months since you've heard from us or whatever. Is there anything that we can help you with, or don't think, or, you know, something on those lines?
Right. Okay.
What you might also want to do is let's now change the complete circumstance of this email and say that this is a Gator Mail entry group of all of our contacts that are looking for kind of employment, or people that we signed in the last, let's say, 30 days. This email then outlines kind of all the different industries that you help people find jobs in. You've then got that condition in there that says anybody that clicks on this link, so let's say aerospace, goes down this positive channel. What you might want to do is update the contact record as well. So you might have a field called category or looking for job, and then you might then have set the contact value of aerospace. So what that will do is when you export the data inside a Communicator, you can see that these guys are really interested in aerospace. So when you're exporting that data, you can physically see that. So when you make that call, you've got that conversation to talk about, and you're not having to look through a previous history on that campaign.
So how would you do that?
So that's what I'm about to show you. So let's say that that's what we want to do. You're on the Gator Mail, you've got an option here called Set Contact Value.
Right.
And if I drag the Set Contact Value here, I'll click on the drop down to select the attribute name. So let's pretend that the attribute name, let's see if we've got a field called category. We don't. So let's just use the field address 1 and pretend that means category. And then in the value, I can then write aerospace.
Right, yeah.
And that's just going to update the address 1 with aerospace. Yeah. So does that all kind of make sense on how you can...
So if you didn't, if the category wasn't completed, but you had it in your, would that just populate it then, would it? In your list, if you didn't have category initially? I'm trying to work out what, or it just creates a new list.
So what you would do, yeah, so it wouldn't create a new list or anything. All it would do is when you export your data from Communicator, on one of the fields would now be category, and you'll then see the
so it would create a a list of candidates, and it would, in that list of candidates or clients, it would have a new category saying aerospace.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what you would need to do is you would need to create that field first inside of Communicate. So you need to create the field category in the system first. So to do that, again, you would go back to audience, add attribute, and then enter in the attribute name.
But it wouldn't necessarily matter if it was blank. You're just actually creating that as a field to look for.
Absolutely. You're just creating that field to look for. You're not putting in the values in there. It's pointless having that feature in there at all.
No. Okay.
Yeah? So does anybody have any questions about anything that we've done so far?
No, I'm good, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, one audience section that we haven't covered so far is the Gator workflow completion. So what that means is that they've completed a workflow and they're now being part of another workflow. So what we would do where we got the set contact value, would click on the drop down for decisions, and we add the exit because we don't want anything more to happen in this workflow. Within that exit, we enter in a value, and we can put any value you want. So you could use TF, you could use true, false, you can use butterfly v moth. You know, the value doesn't matter. You just need to remember what it is. So with this one, I'll call it interested.
Interested in aerospace, yeah?
Yeah, there we go. And if I click on the OK button, that's now exited them. I haven't got any campaigns to send these guys yet, but maybe in 3 months I might have some. because that's what we've got in our content journey to be created.
Yeah.
So if I go and click Save the Workflow, and I'm just going to leave this workflow now by clicking on the Workflow section at the top, I'm going to create a brand new workflow, and I'm now going to have the entry point of Gator Workflow Completion. So if I drag that over to my canvas, I can click on the drop down, and I can now select the workflow called Training, which will be the general one. And then I can tick the box to say anybody, add members who have exited with a particular value, and I then enter in the value of aerospace, and that then means that anybody that has exited with the exit value of aerospace now join this workflow. And
so could you add, sorry, could you add that from more than one workflow then?
Well, so without the word aerospace within more than one workflow?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so what you've got is you've got an option here. You've got an option saying all workflows.
Right.
And that will just look at all the workflows. So anybody that leaves the workflow with the exit of aerospace will then be added into this workflow itself.
Okay.
And the reason why you might want to take this approach is because you could end up having one workflow that's ridiculously long. And that means that if anybody was to leave, it'll be very hard for the next person to pick up what was going on, whilst this would be separated into those little junctions that would also help you in regards to reporting.
Okay, yeah.
What else you can do is, ever want to do anything that's kind of,
Right. You're breaking up a bit there.
Sorry, with the note, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah. Yep. No, you've gone again.
With the notification, is that better?
No, you're still gone.
You're breaking up, yeah.
Any better now?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Fine. So, sorry, I don't know what's happening there. But with any of the notifications that are being sent, would you want them to be sent to the particular sales owner as opposed to just sending to a generic email address?
Yes.
Okay. So what we would need to do to achieve that is if we go back into the training one, we need to add something before the send notification to look at that field information. So what we would do is we'd click on Gator Mail, and where we've got store contact value, we would drag this onto our canvas. And the best bet to do it is kind of just before the notification itself. So what I would have done by dragging that onto the canvas is I now enter in the name to say account manager. And I click on the drop down and select that attribute in Communicator. So let's pretend
if that was Will.
So you wouldn't select Will here, you would select the field account manager, and providing the Will's been populated in that, it would then send to Will.
Yeah.
So
that's the attribute, yeah.
Yeah, so address one is account manager.
Yeah.
So I've just got to link it all together now because it's a bit separate. So let's go and do that. Drag that up to the top, drag that one down to that way. So then on the send notification itself, if I click on the pencil icon, next to email address, I've got a switch. Can you see that?
Yeah.
If I click on that switch, I can then click on the drop down and then select the account manager field that we just created, which then means it's going to be looking at that account manager to whoever that notification is sent to. So in that account manager field, it would need to have their email address in there.
Okay. So you can either do it manually or by pulling it from where the data is.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So if you wanted somebody to have an overall track on it, then your best bet is sending it to someone like sales and like an overall inbox. But if obviously you wanted to send to that individual, then you can do that dynamically through that option. So that means that people are only going to receive notifications based on their clients or prospects.
And you set the account manager up in the original email campaign from the original source data?
Absolutely. So where you've imported that data, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, okay.
But what you might do is you might realise kind of down the line you don't have that information at the moment, but when you but let's say 4 months down the line you have that information, and when you import that data into Communicator, it's going to update the account manager field, which means the workflow would then start spitting out the start sending it to the account manager.
Okay.
So does anybody have any questions in regards to the workflow that we've covered so far, or anybody got any questions around the workflow at all before I go and show you some examples in our account?
No, I'm fine.
In fact, before I do that, I should show you how to make it live. So to make the
yeah, actually, there's one question because we're going to want to probably have a play around with this, aren't we?
Yes.
So at the moment, it won't. Nothing we do on here until we do the next step would happen.
Exactly. So
correct?
anything at the moment, nothing's going live. So this isn't sending to anything.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to show you how to change it, because you might want to test it.
Yep.
So what you would do is you would click on this icon here that appears to the right of the save icon that says change the workflow state. From clicking that, I can then change that to live and click on OK, which we don't want to do. We want to go through the testing process first. So if I click on the drop down, I can select the test option and click on OK. That's now saying that's a success, so it's now in the process of changing to the test mode. How we know when it's changed into test mode is that icon that's now grey will turn to orange, and that means that we can then start to add data into it and start to send ourselves down that whole path. So we just need to wait for it to change. In order for it to change, the campaigns must be initiated, but the campaigns are not being sent to anybody because it's not governed by any group or anything like that. So there's nothing you need to be worried about in regards to that aspect of things. And when the workflow, like I said, what you can do is you can always change, from it going live, you can still change it back into design mode to make any changes, and you can also change it back into test mode if you were unsure of something working, so it doesn't cock up your live data. So you've always got the ability to change the different settings of it. It's never anything that's set in stone. So
just coming from the point of view of, for example, how if we're like, say, if we run a if we had candidates, so the data list or the data list of candidates is obviously always growing. How would we automatically add data into to make sure that as new candidates are registered with us, they're entering a flow, or new clients are entered with us, they're entering a flow?
So that can be done in one of two ways. Number one, they get added to the basic training group or whatever groups at the start of the workflow.
And that would just check duplicates like we've done before, when
absolutely,
so you add it up.
So
that's a manual add, but then it will check and do, and it will just add the new ones to the group.
Absolutely, absolutely. Or only add the new contact to the group, so you're not going to have the same person receiving the email.
Okay. Okay. Yep.
So the other way of doing it is in this group itself, you have a rule. So you would, when you do the import, you would have a value that you insert and say if that group meets that, if that attribute meets the criteria, then add them into that group automatically. But again, you're still going to have to do that CSV import each time. And so the easiest way to do it would be to import the data into the group that's attached to the workflow.
Okay.
So what we're now looking at is we're now looking at it in design mode. So we haven't got the ability to delete anything on this screen or change or add anything to it. You would need to take it back into design mode.
And how do you do that?
Click on it again to the right of the state.
Right, got you. Yeah.
That's always how you change the state of it. What we do is we now want to test this internally.
You're breaking up again, James.
Yeah.
Are we back in the room, or are we still breaking up?
That's better, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So what you now want to do is, obviously you don't want to test this with live. You want to test this with live data, but you only want to be using the people internally as opposed to externally. So what you would do is you would click on the edit this workflow button. From hitting edit this workflow button, you've then got test email address, where on each line I would enter in every email address that I want to send the test to. What I would then do is, where I've got Gator Mail group entry, I'd click on the go to analysis button first of all, And from hitting the go to analysis, where I've then got that Gator Mail group entry, if I hover over it, I can click on the plus button here and enter in the email address of who I want the workflow to go live to, not live to, but to test to. So if I click on add workflow member, click on close, I'm now going to start to go through the sequence of emails. However, what you don't want it to happen is you don't want to be waiting 2 days in this condition to be moved on to the next condition. So what you're going to need to do is advance yourself on from that, and I'll show you how to do that when we get into that stage. But it might, with the workflow, it can take up to 10 minutes to be added to the workflow as it refreshes every 10 minutes itself. So it's never going to be anything instant when you're in there unless you've hit it straight away. In the Members tab, you'll be able to view everybody that's in that workflow itself, and you'll also be able to see from this screen here, you've got the active members, which means they're in that current stage, and the completed members mean they've finished that stage and been passed on to the next stage. So as you can see now, that's now been populated with 1, and now I'm in the process of being sent that email campaign called Workflow 1. Once I've been sent that campaign of Workflow 1, I'll then be moved into the condition there. Under the Members tab, you'll now see the email address as part of that workflow, and as you'll see, if I click on the right drop down to the Actions section, I can then decide, if I decided that I clicked on the wrong thing, I can remove the member, allowing re-entry. So that means that I can go through the workflow and test a different journey. So that, because you're not ever going to have the, well, it's very unlikely that you're going to have the one route of campaigns. It's more than likely that you're going to have a condition in there where somebody could fall out of. And so you're going to need to test each route. So what we're just waiting for now is we're just waiting for myself to fall into that condition. So when you do go through the workflow itself, you will be sent that campaign. So if I look in my inbox, I should now have that campaign that's coming on through. So as you can see now, I've now got the campaign that I put in part of the workflow. And as you can see, I've now been added into the condition itself. So I want to go down the negative route of this workflow, which means I can't open the email. So instead of having to wait those 2 days, I can click on the drop down here, and now I can advance the member on. Can you see that option?
Yeah, okay.
And from advancing myself on, it will then bring up that pop-up to say request made. It's going to take a couple of minutes in order for me to go through the next route. So that's how you can test the workflow itself. Any questions in regards to that?
How do you choose which way they advance, negative or positively?
You can't, because if they the way that it would work is for me to positively for me to go down the positive route, I would need to do whatever the condition says. So in the email, right, I'd then need to go and click on the Twitter icon, or in the scenario that we use, the About Us icon.
Yeah, okay, got your link. Fine.
Yeah, so then the reason behind that approach, why we don't allow you to navigate yourself, is because you don't know if the condition's ever going to work that way. So that's why it's always based on that condition rule, as opposed to you being able to advance yourself and picking the way that you move. So any questions in regards to the testing of a workflow?
No, all good.
Brilliant. So again, if you wanted to go and make that live, you would click on Go to Editor, and you would click on that icon to change the state of it, and you would then select the live option and click on OK. I'm going to move that back into design mode for now. So you said that you want to see some examples of what we do at Communicator in regards to the workflow. So let me show you some of them now. Or let me at least try and see if I can find anything. So what we've got here is we've got one of the renewal emails, or an ESP renewal workflow here. So as you can see, what happens is we have somebody added to the group, which is pulled through a group inside of Communicator. They're then sent renewal email 1. They then wait 30 days. They receive renewal email 2. Again, they've got a 7-day wait in there, and they've then got a condition to say if they've clicked on the clicked on any of the URLs within the email. If they haven't, they receive ESP renewal email 4, and if they have, they go down the third route. What we're then doing is we're then saying, right, send a notification regardless of what route they go down, and that notification is going to be sent to sales, so the sales team are aware of when they're next about to expire. So this is one that the sales team use. So when we get the data in, so when our sales team are making those cold calls to our prospects, we're asking them questions such as when does their ESP expire and so on and so forth. And from that, they're being added into a group inside of Gatormail, and they're then receiving a campaign, waiting 30 days, sending another campaign to the recipient.
So you'll get the date from them saying, right, their email service provider's contract up on the 1st of February.
Absolutely.
On the 1st of February, they'll get that. Okay.
Exactly.
So we could quite easily send up a PSL reminder, something like that when it comes. Okay. All right. Yep.
Yeah. So that's I didn't realise we built a workflow like that, but that is a really good idea for us to do, which I'm quite shocked at. What we've also, do you guys run any events or anything?
Not regularly.
No. Okay.
So it's going to be more the triggered workflows, I would have thought, or
yeah.
Or the nurture campaigns. It's quite interesting to see how you do those ones.
Yep. So what I'll look at now is I'll look at an asset download for you, if that's okay, and then we'll see if I can find another one like that. So what we do with our asset downloads is we say anybody that enters this group. So that's from completing the form itself on the website. What we do, and it's entirely up to you on what approach you take, but the easiest approach of doing it is creating a form in Communicator and then iframing that form onto your website. However, some people are very against iframing onto the website, so it depends on what your overall view is on that.
I'll speak to the boss Liz in a minute.
Can you just say that again, sorry?
So the easiest way and the way that we do this, the asset download, is we build a web capture form in Communicator and we iframe it onto the website. I know that some people are completely against iframes on the website, so it's entirely up to you whether you take that approach or not.
Sorry, are you saying iPhoning?
iframing.
iframing. Sorry. Okay.
So it's entirely up to you if you guys wanted to take that approach or not. But that's how we do it. So like I was saying, somebody completes that form, they get added to the group inside of Gatormail. It then looks at their contact value inside of Communicator to see if they've been sent a campaign recently. If they have been sent a campaign in the last, let's say, 6 months or so, whatever time range, then they'll exit the workflow itself. Whilst if they haven't, they'll then be added to the traffic. They'll then have a traffic light applied to them to say that they've now been sent a campaign in the last 6 months. And they'll then go through to a wait stage of 3 days, and then it waits until 11 o'clock on that day to then send them the second email campaign, which is a LinkedIn download. It then waits another 4 days to send them the next email, and so on and so forth. We then go from that asset download itself, we then add them into a condition that says, have they clicked on any of these links? If they have, send a notification through to the sales team to inform them that somebody has been clicking and interacting with the from the asset download. If they haven't, invite them to one of our seminars, and then it then waits 4 days and it then takes them off the traffic light so they don't receive any more of our communications and exits them. The only time that you'll start to need to use those traffic lights is if you're sending out shed loads of kind of workflow campaigns, because you don't want to be bombarding people with emails. But at the moment, it's not totally gone.
No, it's not an issue at the moment. But if you were, is that a date field that you put in on your CSV? Is it?
No, we do. No, you don't even need to be that clever about it. What Communicator's got is we've got a field called last send date. And the last send date will then have the rule criteria to say anybody, well, in this way it's been done slightly differently, but how it would normally be done is a Gatormail contact.
Right.
And I select the field last send what is it, send date, is that it? I can never remember what we call the fields. Bear me 2 seconds so I can find that field name for you. Cool. There we go. So it's called most recent send date. So it'd say most recent send date, and I'll say is less than, and then select the date and time there. So if it's less than that time period, then it's going to meet that condition.
Right. Yeah.
And so then if they do meet it, then they carry on going through. But if they don't, we exit and say, look, guys, I've sent you enough stuff already, so we're just going to leave you alone. But another way in which I've seen the kind of, and let's see if we've got anything built up like that at the moment, because that's quite complicated in comparison to what we used to do. Cool, we do just like to get ourselves even more complicated with these workflows now. Yeah. So the normal and traditional way that we see people, what we see people building the workflow for a form fill or something like that, is we'd say GatorMail group entry, and that GatorMail group would be based on where that data is being pulled into. So from that form, it would go into that GatorMail group essentially.
Yeah. So, for example, our candidate registration form would be there, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you would then say send email campaign, and that email campaign will be whatever they're signing up to. So maybe that
could be our registration. That could be our registration form, a registration email.
Yeah, if you wanted it to be, absolutely. If that was what they was, so whatever they're on that form that they're completing on their website, whatever that submit button's saying, or whatever the transition after that web capture, we're now doing in the workflow. So if it was a document, you would obviously then send them a link to a document. If it wasn't a document and it was that form that they needed to go off and complete, you would then link them to the form.
Okay.
So you would just carry on building it through that. And what you would then go on and do is then you would go on and add in a condition to say if they haven't done it, then send them back through to that first campaign again, or if they have, leave, or then send them something a bit more relevant. So saying, because you've downloaded that document, people also like this document.
Okay.
Yeah, so you just
and you set up the downloads on Gator. You set up the downloads on
in GatorMail in the group.
In GatorMail, yeah. Okay.
But that all depends on kind of the approach that you go through with the forms. If you're happy, like I said, you've got three options basically. Option one, you replace all the forms on your website with forms that are created inside a communicator with an iframe, within an iframe.
Can I just ask you, is that going to look like it's actually part of the website, or is it going to have GatorMail branding?
No, it'll be in the branding that you specify.
Right, okay.
So you would need to come up with kind of the template and everything. We would obviously give you a hand where needed, but you would essentially build it to what you want.
Well, I'd imagine that's what we're doing. No?
The only problem with that is, let me take you through to our website. It's always the last thing to load on the website. So you can see where you got book a free demo there. That is an iframe, and as you can see, it blends in with our website, but it is always the last thing to load on that page.
Okay, and the other options?
The other option is, if you've got somebody in-house, great, but if not, you pay a developer to create an API connection with your current forms to push them into a GatorMail group. But by doing that, everybody gets a bit scared because they're like, well, we're going to have to pay a developer to do that. But then if you think about it internally, if you use Elizabeth's time to go off and create those forms, it could well take her a day, which could be the same price as paying for a developer. But you've still got Elizabeth doing her day-to-day job or whatever it might well be, yeah?
The only thing, the web forms on our website, they're really, really simple, so they wouldn't take as long. So it's literally a drag-and-drop system where you can just be like, I mean, I haven't created one yet, but they've showed us. It's really quite straightforward, so that would be my
so the forms on your website.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
The forms on your website that you've currently got on there, there's so many applications you've got for so many different CMSs that it is so simple to create that form. With Communicator, it is going to take you that time to create the form, and I'm going to be honest with you, but that's just the nature of kind of iframing stuff.
Yeah.
Because you need to make sure that the colours all match, and then you need to be careful that the size is all right, and it hasn't broke the responsive design on your website. Whilst if you do use one of those websites,
an API.
Yeah, or something.
So what you then need. So what you then need to do is basically, from that form that you've created, you then connect the API to your Communicator account, and you say where you want that data to go between. And then the third option is I can send you over some JavaScript code that you can put, that you would have to, again, you would have to add certain things to it, but you can put that behind the form, which would cookie the contact inside a Gator Leads. And from cooking the contact inside a Gator Leads, we can then push that into a group into Communicator.
Would that be the easiest option for us to do, or?
It depends on how, if you've got anybody that understands JavaScript internally. Because I give you 90% of it, but there's still 10% of work needed to be done with that JavaScript.
If I got you to, would you mind having a quick conversation? Because you know we're getting our website developed at the moment.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So we've got a new website at the moment. It's still in it's in testing phase currently.
Okay.
With Volcanic. I don't know if you come across those guys, but
no.
If I gave you our account manager, their number, would you mind having a conversation with her and working out whether or not we need an API?
What the approach to be would be, yeah.
Or whether they can sort out the JavaScript as far as forms are concerned.
Absolutely, yeah. If you could do me a favour and send over her email address or do an introduction between the two parties.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I'll then send her an email with everything, and then I'll arrange a call with her. Arrange myself and her to have a call about the best possible, about the way that she wants to work. But that would be
great.
Easy.
Okay, let's do that.
Perfect. Brilliant. So does anybody have any other questions in relation to the workflow or anything else at all today?
No, I'll tell you what would be quite interesting. I don't know whether you've got access to it or not, because I think originally we sort of spoke whether or not you've actually got some example ones that people have used in recruitment, maybe just to kind of get us going as far as a flow is concerned.
Yep. Let me see if they, I don't know, who were they? Oh, what was his name? Just bear with me 2 seconds. Let me see if I can get in their account. I shouldn't probably do this, but what were they? Just close your eyes for a split second.
I'm closing.
Oh, fantastic. So what we've got here is we've got a workflow that a recruitment agent uses at the moment.
Okay.
And what they've got is they've got 3 different group entries here. So they've got one for their graduate scheme, one for all their contacts, and one that meet the summaries or something like that. Whatever. I don't know what those groups are built up of. What they then do is they send them an email campaign which talks to them about the graduate scheme they have to offer internally.
Okay.
They then wait 6 days and say, right, has anybody opened that email?
Yeah.
If they have, then they leave straight away. But if they haven't, then send them a bit more information about the graduate sales that they have to offer.
Okay.
They then wait 30 days, and again they see if they open it. And if they don't open it, they receive another email basically being like, guys, why haven't you left this?
Fairly straightforward, yeah.
If I'm honest with you, I think you can come up with a lot better solutions than these guys can.
We can work that.
They're very, like I said, we've got a few recruitment agents, and these are the first to kind of explore with the workflow. But unfortunately, with the nature of them, they haven't got anybody working in marketing, so it's the director of the company that is building the workflow campaign.
And they're usually useless at that kind of thing.
I wasn't going to say anything there, but I'm glad you did. But so they've obviously got time to spend elsewhere, and they don't have the time to necessarily learn it. So you're at the advantage of having Elizabeth.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
I just better get learning then.
Absolutely, absolutely. And obviously, when you create your first workflow, or if you need any help, we are here to help you. We're not saying that you've now had this training, now bugger off and get on with it.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to be on the phone to you, but it might just be easier if it is one-to-one, and then I can just ask you. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's probably best if I just spend some time having a play, and then.
Well, I think we can draw some up. We'll just draw some on paper first. I think we can all sit down and just draw
always
some.
Always do that. Always draw up on a piece of paper, because and don't just draw up on a piece of paper and then go and build it. Speak to somebody, and speak to somebody that knows nothing about it, because I did that when I first got through to the workflow. I came up with this ingenious, well, what I thought was an ingenious idea. I then spoke to somebody and they said, James, you've made it the most complicated thing in the world. If you were to do that in Communicator, you would waste hours on end. And they then simplified it into 5 different steps as opposed to 30 steps. So absolutely draw on a piece of paper and speak to somebody before you go on and build it, because you're wasting so much time doing that.
Yeah. Sure.
Just on the engaging with social media, how does that work? So if someone likes us on Facebook or something like that, because you've got a way of doing something along those lines, haven't you? How do you typically do that?
No, we don't have any interaction with that, if that makes sense. The only thing that you could do if somebody clicked on a link from the social media campaign, we could feed them through the alert system into a Gatormail group, providing that they had been on your website in some cookie process.
Okay, so it'd be from a link they take off the social media, which you would have put the code on to track where that went from originally.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but they would need. But on your social media posts, what you would then need to do is essentially, you would only really post from social media to the to kind of form fills and stuff like that, so you can get that individual contact for them. If that makes sense. With social media, it is.
Yeah, I got you. So yeah, I mean, basically, if we, in simple terms, if we posted out a thing to Facebook saying, register your CV today, click here, here's the form, we can do it that way.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Brilliant. Does anybody else have any other questions regarding the workflow or anything?
No, I think it's a case of us all sitting down now having to play around about what workflows we need to set up, and then asking all these questions all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best way to go. And like I said, I'm here if you need me, so just drop us an email.
And I'll send you that intro email to Helen, and we'll talk about the forms. Okay.
Brilliant.
Cheers. Thank you. Take care.
Cheers. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.